I just wrote a song. It's called In the Barn of the Goat, Giving Birth to Satan's Spawn in a Dying World of Doom. And they said, what the is that?
Yeah.
Exactly. Let me just play the song. And I played the song. And then Casper, my bass player, where's the chorus? She said, exactly. There is no chorus. Now all people going to wait for that stupid horror flick line in the barn of the goat. That's gonna be the essence and climax of the song. Just imagine an arena or a stadium singing that line. Oh my God, it's gonna be fun.
The David Ellefson Show. Featuring Grammy Award winner David Ellefson and respected metal journalist Joshua Toomey. Presented by EllefsonEmporium.com. Here is David and Joshua.
Hey everybody, David Ellefson here, The David Ellefson Show. My co-host Joshua Toomey here. Check him out also on his podcast, Talk To Me. And today we got a cool guest, Michael Poulsen from Volbeat. And it's funny, I have a bit of a history with him from back in 2012 when Lacuna Coil, Volbeat, Motorhead, Megadeth, we did a very successful arena gigant tour across North America. Was really great. And I remember they, in my opinion, stole the show, man. I thought out of the three opener bands, they were just killing it. Lemmy was really kind of toward the end, he was struggling a lot. It was very known he had health problems, and it's Motorhead, right? So it's irrefutable. But as the new band coming out, Volbeats were just this new sound, this Metallica with a rockabilly singer. That's just kind of what I think we all universally understood them to be, right?
And I talk about it in the interview, but I went to see them in Nashville. I think I can't honestly remember who else was on the bill, but I think I went to see somebody else, but then I saw Volbeat, and that's when I got it, because they're one of those bands that you hear, you're like, I don't know, I don't really get it, but then you see them live, and you're like, okay, now it all makes sense. And I posted that day, I was just like, the greatest rockabilly metal band is not from Nashville. It's from fucking Denmark. You step your game up, Nashville. But they definitely bridged the gap, for a kid like me growing up in Nashville with, all of my friends' parents are in Alabama and they play, for Ernest Tubb and all this other stuff. And then you've got my love of Metallica and Megadeth and everything else. So kind of combine it into one band. I was like, all right, I get it. This is awesome. And the new album, God of Angels Trust, out June 6th. I think if you're a classic Volbeat fan, like the first couple records, I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised with kind of how much of a throwback it is.
Yeah. And they make very wide records, everything we talked about it, and Michael speaks to it as well, that there's a lot going on inside just one band, and they can be pretty wide with their sound, whereas most bands can't. If you're a metal band, it's pretty narrow. If you're a pop band, you can't go too heavy. Right. So they're able to cover a lot of ground. And I think the new record definitely taps every bit of that. So, let's check it out with Michael Poulsen here. So, hey, everybody, David and Josh here. And just want to let you know about Rockabilia, our new partners here on the show. And you can visit them and enter David10 for 10% off on any of your purchases. So some cool stuff they have there, Josh.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome company. I mean, if you're of my generation of the we go to the magazine aisle, and when it was a print magazine, and Rockabilia was in every Metal Edge and Metal Maniacs and whatever else, and you would circle every Megadeth t-shirt you wanted, or Metallica or Slayer or whatnot. So super pumped to have Rockabilia on with the David Ellefson Show. And just a few things. They've got over 500,000 items over at rockabilia.com, including staples like the Master of Puppets shirts, Rest in Peace shirts. They do limited edition exclusive drops each month. And the one thing that they wanted to stress was everything is 100% authentic. No bootlegs over there at rockabilia.com. So that's obviously a plus there too.
Cool. So the money goes where it's supposed to go. So, all right. Excellent. All right. So check it out. Rockabilia, David 10 for 10% off. Check it out. Rockabilia.com.
Perfect.
All right.
Man, we're professionals.
Yeah. Hey, welcome to the David Ellefson Show. And my cohort here, Joshua Toomey. We got Michael Poulsen here with us today. Arizona, Mark.
Southern Indiana.
Southern Indiana. Okay.
There we go.
We're trying to keep his location non-disclosed. So anyway, Michael,
so the haters can't come find me.
Exactly. Man, thanks for taking a minute. I know you're in the middle of a big press junket here for your new album. It's funny. I heard it the other day. In fact, I remember right where I was. Literally a week ago, it was a Monday night. I was driving to an event, and it came on KUPD, which is our active rock station here in Phoenix. And I was like, "Holy shit, dude, this is fucking amazing!" And I actually had to look down and go, "Holy shit, is that new? It must be the new Volbeat." So anyway, it was super, super great, man. Those big, heavy, low end, sonic boom. So a new album, I think, is coming out June 5th, right? I think is your downbeat, right?
June 6th.
6th, okay. Yeah. Right. Thank you. Oh yeah, Friday, of course, June 6th. You took the year off last year and you went back out with your death metal band, right? Didn't you go back out and do a tour with As in Hell, I believe?
Yeah, we signed a deal with Middle Blade, recording an album, MP Horror, and we follow up with a European tour. I think we played, I believe it was maybe 27 shows or something. That was definitely, it was nice to get back to those clubs again if you were not playing festivals. Because some of the clubs I was not even aware that they were still in existence.
Right.
So that was a very great to visit those clubs again. That's where we started with Volbeat, those small clubs, and I think the cockroach was still the same walking around.
So it's funny. I talked about this on our podcast too when we remixed "Killing Is My Business" for the third time, and I wanted to do the same thing, go out and kind of play one or two of the clubs that were still around, and the only one that was still around is the Metro in Chicago. Okay. That's the only one. Like all the rest of them in San Francisco, and all those are gone. And so I guess coming up, did you guys play the Rock? I assume, right? That's isn't that like the whiskey of Copenhagen? Or is
it closed down many years ago, actually.
Jesus, okay, that's how long it's been since I played there with Ripper, and when I came through, God, that was I guess it was 2009. That was a while ago. And it's funny, we had Hank Shermann come up. And play with us. And so it's funny. So let's digress. 2012, we did Gigantour together, Lacuna Coil, Volbeat, Motorhead, and Megadeth. And I remember talking to the manager after the tour, and he goes, "Man, Volbeat should have been the direct support. Those guys were fucking amazing." Like, we were all like blown away, It's just like, what is this? And I was trying to put a description on it, like what is this? And it was great, obviously. But Hank Shermann was playing guitar with you, and Hank Shermann from Mercyful Fate for the audience here. So how did that happen? Outside of, I guess, maybe he's your Danish neighbor. How did that friendship come about?
Well, I've known Hank for many years. At the time where I lived in Copenhagen, we came to some of the same bars, and like everybody else, I was a huge fan of Mercyful Fate. So we had a lot of talk about, and he knew my past band at that time, which were a death metal band called Dominus, and he was also totally aware of Volbeat. So now and then we hooked up and met up at the bars and became friends. And how did it actually happen that he? Oh, I actually have to rewind back. How did he end up in Volbeat? Because he ended up playing, I think it was 88 shows.
Wow.
Yeah. He went on a whole tour for a whole year.
Mm-hmm.
It was at a time where we said goodbye to our guitar player at that time. Thomas was his name, and we were a little bit in a hurry to figure out what to do. I remember talking to Michael Dinner, because I was actually talking more with Michael Dinner of Mercyful Fate than Hank Shermann. And so we talked about doing something together, and I asked, do you think you could go on tour with Volbeat? And he said, I would love to, but I just don't have the time for doing that. But totally call Hank Shermann.
Like how seldom is that a guy gets a gig offer like that? Yeah, I can't do it. Here, call him. He'll do it. Right? Most people are like, I'll clear my calendar. You know what I mean? And it's funny. Denner. I remember when King Diamond formed. So it was the Peace Sells tour. We had just signed to Capitol Records in 1986, and King went solo, right, as King Diamond, and he kept Timmy Hansen on bass and Michael Denner, and then he brought in Mickey D and Andy LaRock. But, those guys are very, very stoic. They very kind of like keep to themselves and very stoic in their methods. But it was just so great, as all of us being Mercyful Fate fans, and a guy like me and Megadeth, us living over here, that was something we couldn't get, So when it showed up in the form of King Diamond, it was just like, oh my God, this is like, 3/5 of Mercyful Fate on stage with. So it was cool. That's why. And it's funny because Michael or Hank Shermann was a guy who was not like out about the scene. You know what I mean? So I just thought that was very cool that worked out. Here's like kind of an iconic old guard with the cool new band of Volbeat. I just thought that was
and
a
it's
hit.
very important that I remember to say it was not like he was a second choice. It was just because I was talking a lot with Michael Denner at that certain time, and I came to so many times in his record shop. So it came naturally to me that giving him the offer, so that it was not about him being a second choice. It was just more, it felt more naturally to ask Michael, since I was talking a lot with Michael.
Sure.
And I was still, and I said to Mike, Hank doesn't want to do that. You think so? No, give him a call. He might be interested.
Right.
So I gave him a call, and then, we were talking about a lot of stuff. And then, and he said, yeah, why not? Let's jam a little bit and see where it goes. Yeah. And I think he was just as surprised how we were playing the Volbeat music, just as surprised we were when I was sitting with Hank just to jam some Mercyful Fate stuff.
Right. The pleasure was yours as well.
So just as you think you know how to play it, you're all wrong.
Yeah, right. Let's start with Into the Coven and see where this goes,
Well, Michael, man, I want to dive in here, man. I grew up in Nashville, Tennessee, and the first time I saw you guys in Nashville, I remember kind of like tweeting out or sending out a Facebook post like, the one band that figured out how to combine Johnny Cash and like Metallica came from, Denmark. Nashville, you need to step your game up. Kind of talk about kind of growing up with those influences and how they kind of got into Volbeat like that.
Yeah, well, I basically grew up in a home, with my parents, my childhood home, and they were constantly listening to music from the 50s. The record player was just constantly spinning with 50s music, and if it was not the record player, the videotapes will be rolling. My father had one of the first video machines, and he managed to get a lot of live concerts from the 50s. So listening to that music was just as normal as drinking milk or water or eating.
Right.
It was just such a huge part of the sound in the house. When I moved out of the house, something was missing, and that was the sound of all the music that my parents has been playing for so many years. And even though when I moved out of the house, it was we lived in a small countryside called Ringsted, which were a little bit over an hour drive from Copenhagen. But when I was, I believe I was 18 when I moved out of the house, because the music scene, of course, were bigger in Copenhagen. There was a lot of great gigs to get to and a lot of record stores, and you could pretty much just have a life on the street, tape trading, and just hanging out with people from the scene. So I decided to move to Copenhagen, also to start putting new members into my band at that time, Dominus. And so in the beginning, starting playing death metal, that was great. It was, even though that I grew up with the 50s music, as a little bit later on, as I probably was 10 years old when I started listening to classic heavy metal, and a little bit later on, a couple of years after, I discovered the more extreme scene, especially from Florida, and the Swedish scene was really huge.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, the Scandinavian scene became really huge. But when that ended, I think we made a couple of demos, 4 records. It came to a point where the way that I was writing, I wanted to mix so many different styles, and that was all about the music that I grew up with. And it didn't seem that there was any acceptance being a death metal band trying to combine Johnny Cash and Elvis Presley. No go. So I said, you know what? I'm going to take a little break from this death metal thing, because I got something in me where I'll definitely try to combine all the great styles that I've been listening to at my childhood home. And I start writing the songs, and I had no idea what style that was. And for me, it was important that there was no rules. You couldn't put us in a box. It didn't really matter what it was. It was all about the influences, and then, get a lineup and start working. And I even remember when I called John, my bass player, my drummer, and said, "Do you still have your drums?" I haven't played for at least 10 years. So, okay, it doesn't matter. I'll get over to you, see if we can dust off those drums in the basement. See, I got some ideas for some songs. And he said, "What is it?" "Oh, don't worry about that. We'll figure that out." But he even asked, because he said, "Well, it's a little bit weird because the intro of this song sounds like Johnny Cash, but then it goes into something that sounds like Social Distortion." And up being, a little bit Metallica, and what is this? And I said, "I don't know, don't worry about it." But for me, it came so naturally for me to mix those styles, that I didn't thought about that on paper. It sounded ridiculous, almost like a failed food program or something where you couldn't put those together. It's awful. But it worked. For some reason, we managed to pull it out. And I remember when we started playing some of the first clubs, very few people showed up. And the few ones that showed up, besides the friends, were people who expected death metal. Mm-hmm. And they couldn't really figure out. A lot of them said, "This, I don't know what you guys are trying to do, but you will even, it's gonna turn into absolutely nothing, or you guys will be big."
Yeah.
Right. There's no in between.
And at that time, it was never about us even trying to be successful or becoming big or anything else. It was about to belong somewhere, because we were a little bit outcasts and misfits that didn't really like going to school, or we didn't have any kind of education, and we did have day jobs just to keep our head over the water. But it was always about the music, being in the street picture, tape trading, buying underground magazine, hang out at the clubs, and just to feel that you belonged somewhere. So it was never about, thinking that it could go somewhere. It was more about, let's do this as brothers. Let's build a small army, and this is going to be ours, and who gives a fuck what other people think? This is going to be ours, and let's see if we can book some shows, and let's see where it goes. And
so it's funny that you say that too, because that's the same mentality that Lars brought over from Denmark to here to America. Now, of course, I got into LA in 1983, so Metallica had already kicked off a couple years earlier in 1981, but very much that was the scene, the whole tape trading, fanzines, that whole thing. That just is pre-internet, of course. And it's interesting that is the modality, right? That's the magic carpet by which the whole thing works. It was this very organic street level scene. And it's cool to hear that you grew up in that as well, right? I mean, a few years later, different era, so to speak. Music had changed a bit, but here you are coming out of that same geographical area, Scandinavia, and yet the rules hadn't changed, right? It's still very much this organic street scene, and I think all of us in a band, right? It is about that. It's like just trying to find a place to belong, and you call the other guys that have the same kind of T-shirts and the same kind of record collection, and we start putting bands together, and I thought the same thing after we did the Gigantor. I was like, God, what is the label you put on this? And the other night when I was listening to a couple of tracks on your new record, I thought that same thing about Social Distortion. I thought, God, there's like this really just awesome collection of these singers in there. And of course, you have a very clear, very clean melodic vocal style that no matter how heavy the riffs are, no matter what it is. In fact, you even use I Walk the Line in the barn of the goat giving birth to Satan's spawn in a dying world of doom. Awesome fucking title. Like that's straight off a Mercyful Fate record right there. If there ever was one, right? and it's funny. I did some vocal lessons like a year ago. I was with my vocal teacher. We were talking about the raised diaphragm versus lower diaphragm, and he said, he goes, listen, if you want your diaphragm to go down for breathing, he goes, just do an Elvis, hey baby, and it immediately just pushes it down. Hey, baby, I'll walk the line, right? Whatever. Do the Johnny Cash, the Elvis, you just do that. It immediately pushes it down. And I was like, awesome. So even before we got on the podcast, I was doing a little Elvis, Johnny Cash. Just get that diaphragm down for the talk here today. So maybe we'll call it a Michael. We'll call it a Poulsen. Yeah, do a Poulsen, and that diaphragm will go right down. So, hey, one thing I wanted to ask you, so, you're Volbeat's big, and this is your thing, right? So you go out this last year, you go do the death metal tour. Did that affect in any way this new Volbeat record, or was it basically just a kind of a clearing of the mind, a vacation of sorts from the day job, from kind of the mainstream approach? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a little bit of both and everything. It's first of all, we were told to take a Sabbath year, which was something that we didn't like because we were used to being on the road, just touring. And when we were not touring, we will be in the rehearsal room and then we'll be in the studio. So when Q Prime, our management, said, it's time for you guys, pull the plug a little bit. You've been playing every year since you started, you don't have to do that. Let's be smart about this. And there was still, after the pandemic where every band in the world was playing at the same time, it totally made sense to pull the plug. And I needed to go and get a third operation on my throat, which would take some time to heal and to recover. So it totally made sense. And I remember Cliff Bernstein, he said, go fix your throat, get that final operation, and then go on tour with As in Hell and forget all about Volbeat, and then return home and make a record. I said, yes, sir.
Nice. Yeah. So management directives, even better.
No, but it's he's a wise man. He's a good man.
Yeah.
And he was totally right. It gave me some good air and sometimes to refresh and recharge the batteries when it comes to Volbeat. And I could get through that third operation and use time to recover. And since I'm only playing the guitar in As in Hell, I didn't have to think about my throat or anything on the tour, which was really great. I totally enjoyed being back on the clubs and just connecting with the crowd up front. And I just promised the other guys in Volbeat that before I was going on that As in Hell tour, I'll be writing the new Volbeat album, so we don't have a Michael coming home and being a death metal monster and make Volbeat. So actually, when I knew when As in Hell was about to go on tour, you know what? Let's see what happens when I pick up the guitar. And that was at the time where we just finished recording the As in Hell album, and I had no idea what would happen. Could I put on that Volbeat hat again and just, jump on the bike and go?
Right.
Or what would happen? But before I did that, I was kind of thinking that there was something really refreshing about feeling that I was starting all over again. It was almost like Volbeat has gone full circle, and you kind of catch your own tail, and you ask yourself, well, what do we do now? And we kind of looked at each other and said, maybe it's just time to start all over again. Let's say that this is the first Volbeat record ever. How do we want Volbeat record to sound like? So, of course, not being 16 or 17-year-old kids again, we're all in our 50s, so it's not like we were desperate trying to be young. It was more like trying to capture that working process that we went through when we started the whole thing. And that was, I remember, we didn't even have the knowledge or experience about what is a chorus, what is a pre-chorus, what is the hook, It was all about the riffing, and then you put some vocals on top of it. And it worked. It still worked. Some of my favorite death metal records are still some of those where the structure is all over the place. There is no structure.
Right.
And, at least the first Volbeat, maybe the two first Volbeat records were also kind of, you could hear that we were still learning and searching and exploring. And I said, since we're still playing some of those songs from the first records and people seem to like it, why not throw the book of rules on the floor and the big toolbox that we have with the experience of being songwriters? Let's burn it. Let's see if we can capture that the innocence of just concentrating on the riff. And I said, normally we will always sit around and wait for the big chorus to kick in. That's what we are waiting for when we hear classic heavy metal or rock music. We're waiting for that chorus.
Right.
What if it was something else that people were waiting for? And Casper and John looked at me. We have no idea what you're talking about. All right. So I just wrote a song. It's called In the Barn of the Goat, Giving Birth to Satan's Spawn in a Dying World of Doom. And they said, what the is that?
Yeah.
Exactly. Let me just play the song. And I played the song. And then Casper, my bass player, where's the chorus? He said, exactly. There is no chorus. Now all people going to wait for that stupid horror flick line in the Barn of the Goat.
That is the hook. The title is the hook.
That's going to be the essence and climax of the song. Just imagine a arena or a stadium singing that line. Oh my God, it's going to be fun.
That is super cool, man. I love how you said that about catching your own tail, because like you say, you come out of the death metal world, Volbeat develops, and then here, last year you go back into the death metal world and come out of it back into Volbeat again. So yeah, what a cool experience, because you're right. It is easy to get caught into these cycles, to these ruts, to these sort of templates of how things have done, maybe even trying to rewrite the same song that once was the hit from some years back. I think we've probably all fallen victim to that. And you're right. There's just, how do you get back to being innocent when you're not really anymore? Because you've got the experience, you've toured the world, you've been in the studio with great producers and managers and people who have, given us great guidance, obviously, that's helps us be successful. So how do you kind of strip all that back and just get that spirit and that feeling back? So, well, I got to tell you, dude, the record is friggin' awesome. Acid Rain is one of my favorites. So, I love that. I love those big hooky melodies that you write, and just that's
where the second half of my brain took over, because the first, the other half, that was where non-structure, no rules. Let's just go riffing, make some surprises. And then the second half of the brain said, "Hey, what about me? Who knows about structure and experience of song? Can I be part of the record too?" And that's why I had to start writing Acid Rain and Lonely Fields, Time Will Heal, Devils Are Awake, where you can hear those big hooks and big choruses. And I think they go really good together, hand in hand with the more innocent material that's on the album. So we were just on fire, and also because of the long break, that we ended up writing the whole material in a month, and we only used 13 days to record it.
Love that.
So it was straight from the hip, and no looking back. I'll be writing a song on Monday. We'll be rehearsing it on Tuesday. Then I wrote a song on Wednesday, and we rehearsed it on Thursday, and then we took the weekend off. And we just continued doing that until we had 10 songs. And Paul Jacob Hansen, our producer, said, "We're coming with a new album, and don't book too many days. We're not going to use this much time."
That's great. There is something about that. We have no time, we have no money, and even if you do have money, to pretend you don't. You know what I mean? Like we're this is it, right?
And because we needed that feeling that you went in with your pocket money and said, "What can?"
Yeah. It's funny, isn't the fans that love those records, and little did they know behind the scenes we were basically almost homeless, or basically, you said, barely keeping our head above water, but we went in with that spirit, and that is the rock and roll spirit. That's what it is, So,
my bass player back in the days, he sold his furniture just so we could get into the studio. That was with my dad. His wife came home. "Where the fuck are our furnitures?" "Yeah, we had to do a demo. We'll get it back."
Yeah, then one day, "Okay, honey, let's go furniture shopping." We're good. Well, Michael, man, thanks for taking a few minutes with us, man. I really appreciate it. It was great to see you a couple years back. I'll probably see you this summer, maybe over in Europe, somewhere in our travels. Look forward to catching up and seeing a show and everything. So I'll let Josh close it out as he always does. So anyway, just great to see you again, and congratulations on the record, man. To me, you nailed all the parts of it, man. So it's good stuff. So really appreciate it.
Appreciate
Josh.
Yeah. Everybody, make sure to check out God of Angels Trust, out June 6th. And Michael, man, it's an incredible record, listening to the entire thing. And as a kid, like I said, I grew up in Nashville, Tennessee, loving Johnny Cash and everybody else, and also metal. And you guys putting it together the way you did, man, it was a great thing back then. And the new album is definitely a throwback to that early Volbeat. So if you're a Volbeat fan from the early days, you're going to love the new record.
Thank you.
All right, brother. Have a good one.
Appreciate
Have a great summer, man. See you, buddy. Bye.
Good.
Hey, just want to give a shout out to Non Heinous, who did our awesome skull artwork, which is kind of mascots that we have here for the David Ellefson Show. So, Josh, thanks for bringing him over. You've got his Instagram handle, right? Because you can get some discounts if bands or people want to use him for stuff, for merch, right?
Yeah, head over to Non-Heinous on Instagram, NonHeinous on Instagram. Let him know that the David Ellefson Show sent you. He'll give you 15% off if you need art for your podcast, your merch, your album, all that great stuff. And it's not he'll work with you the entire way through. He sends you like actual hand-drawn sketches. What do you like about this? Do you like that? It's not AI. It's not a bunch of nonsense. Like, he actually is an artist, and he's doing some great stuff out there. He's done stuff for my podcast. He's done stuff now for the David Ellefson Show, and just a cool dude, man. And if you go check him out, just go follow him on Instagram, because you'll enjoy all of his art that he puts up daily over there too. So he's a good dude, and support the art.
Just like forming Vic Rattlehead, a sketch
there you go,
beginning to a final mascot. So cool. Thanks, Non Heinous. We appreciate you, brother. So yeah, go check him out.